I came home early because my flight got cancelled. That's the part that still gets me, even now. A snowstorm in Calgary. An hour's delay that turned into 3, and then the airline just gave up and sent us all home. I didn't text my best friend because I wanted to surprise him. We'd been roommates before I moved in with my girlfriend. And he still had a key to our place, because we trusted him. Because I trusted him. I walked in through the front door and I could hear them upstairs. I stood in the entryway for probably 30 seconds. Just standing there with my carry-on still in my hand, my coat still on, melting snow dripping off my boots onto the mat. My brain was doing that thing where it offers you every possible alternative explanation. Music, TV. She'd mentioned her cousin was visiting. Maybe it was the neighbors above us. Our building had thin floors. Then I heard his voice. Not words, just his voice. A sound I'd known since we were 17. I set my bag down. I don't know why I did it quietly, but I did. I walked up the stairs. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it the rest of the way. My girlfriend of 4 years and my best friend of 14 years. In my bed. Not even startled. It took them a full second to notice I was standing there, and in that second I saw everything I needed to see. I turned around and walked back downstairs. I heard her call my name. I heard him say something I couldn't make out. I put my boots back on. I picked up my bag. I walked out and closed the door behind me, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time, just breathing. I want to be clear about something, because it matters for everything that comes after. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there, and what I felt, more than anything, was this flat, quiet certainty that something in my life had just ended. Not dramatically, not with noise. It just ended, the way a light goes out when you flip the switch. Here, and then not here. Her name was Simone, and I'd known her since a work event in Edmonton. We'd been together 4 years. Living together for 2. My best friend, I'll call him my best friend because that's what he was. That's what I thought he was. I'd known him since high school in Saskatoon. He was the guy at my side at every major moment of my adult life. Every promotion, every hard winter, every bad day. He knew things about me that nobody else did. That's the part people don't fully understand when they hear a story like this. It's not just the betrayal of a relationship. It's the betrayal of a person who knew exactly how much it would cost you. I drove to a hotel on McLeod Trail and checked in for 2 nights. I sat on the hotel bed and ordered a pizza and watched hockey and didn't feel anything. Or I felt everything and it all canceled itself out. Either way, I just sat there. The next morning I texted her. 6 words. Don't be home when I am. I went back to the apartment during her work hours, took what I needed. Clothes, my laptop, my grandfather's watch, the external hard drive with 5 years of photos on it, and I left. I didn't take everything. I couldn't carry everything. And I didn't want to stand there long enough to try. I found a furnished 1-bedroom in Beltline that was available immediately, month to month. I didn't care about the price, which wasn't like me, but I also couldn't think that far ahead. I needed a door I could close. I blocked her number that afternoon. I blocked him that same evening after he called twice and texted once. The text said, "I'm sorry, man. I need to explain." I deleted it without responding. Then I did the thing that nobody tells you is the hardest part. I had to decide what to do about the people around us. Because when you've been with someone for 4 years, the life you've built together is tangled up with other people. Her friends had become my friends. His friends were already my friends. And then there were the people in the middle. The ones who knew us both, who had invited us to their weddings, who had stayed at our place when they visited, who knew us as a unit. Sent short messages to a few of my close friends. Not detailed. Just, "Simone and I are done. I need some space right now. I'll reach out when I'm ready." Most of them respected that. A couple of them reached out anyway, and I appreciated it even if I didn't respond right away. What I didn't expect, what I genuinely did not see coming, was my own family. My mom and my younger brother had met her at Christmas 2 years in a row. My mom liked her. I'd always known that, but I hadn't realized how much until I told her we'd broken up, and she immediately asked why. Not "Are you okay?" Not "What do you need?" Why? I told her the truth. She went quiet for a moment and then she said, "Are you sure that's what you saw?" I hung up. My brother called the next day. He was more diplomatic about it, which almost made it worse. He said he just wanted me to make sure I wasn't reacting out of anger. That Simone had always seemed like a genuinely good person. That maybe there was context I was missing. I asked him what context he thought could exist. He said he didn't know, but that people make mistakes. I said, "I'm going to stop taking your calls for a while." He tried to talk me out of it. I hung up on him too. What followed was about 8 months of very quiet, very deliberate living. I went to work, I came home, I cooked for myself. Badly at first, then better. I started running. Partly because a guy at my office kept saying it helped him think. And it turned out he was right. I ran along the river pathway in the mornings before it got cold. And then I kept running through the cold. Because stopping felt like going backwards. I put in earbuds and just ran, and for 45 minutes at a time, nothing from my old life could reach me. I didn't date, I didn't want to. I had a few work friends I'd see for lunch or after hours drinks, and that was enough. I wasn't lonely exactly. I was more like a person who had decided to take up a smaller amount of space in the world for a while. Voluntarily, because it was easier to manage. I didn't reach out to my family, and they mostly respected that after the first month. My mom sent a couple of texts around the holidays that I read but didn't reply to. My brother sent one on my birthday that I also read and didn't reply to. I'm not proud of that, but I also don't regret it. I needed the silence. 8 months in, I was standing in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, making eggs when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and I stood there, for a long moment, before I opened it. Because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. It was her, Simone, standing in the hallway outside my apartment, with her coat zipped up and her hands in her pockets, and her eyes already wet before I'd even said anything. She looked different, tired. And there was something about the way she was standing, something in how she held herself, that made me notice before she said a word. She was pregnant. Not obviously, not past any point where she could have hidden it if she wanted to. But I knew her body, and I knew what I was looking at. I said, "How did you find this address?" She said, she'd run into a mutual friend at a grocery store in Kensington. And he'd mentioned the neighborhood by accident, and she'd looked me up through the building directory. I made a note to have a conversation with that friend later. I let her in, because it was below zero in the hallway and I'm not capable of closing a door on someone standing in the cold, even when I probably should be. She sat on my couch and she told me she'd ended things with him. About 2 months after I left. She said it was never what she'd wanted it to be. That she still didn't fully understand how it had happened. That she knew. None of that mattered to me, and she wasn't saying it because she expected it to. She said she was telling me, because she needed me to know that what she had with me was real. Even if what she'd done had destroyed it. I stood by the kitchen counter. I didn't sit down. Then she said she was about 11 weeks along. And that she had only been with 2 people in the relevant time period, and that I should know what that meant. I kept my voice very level. I said, "What do you want from me right now?" She said she wasn't asking for anything. She said, she just thought I deserved to know. She said whatever I decided to do with the information was up to me, but she couldn't carry it alone anymore without telling me. She left about 20 minutes later. I locked the door and stood with my back against it, and stared at my ceiling for a long time. I called a friend from work the next morning. Someone who'd been a steady presence, over the past 8 months. Someone who actually knew how to give advice without making it about himself. I told him the whole thing. He listened without interrupting, which I appreciated more than I can say. When I was done he said, "Okay, first thing you need to do is get a test." He meant a paternity test. He didn't say it like it was an accusation. He said it like it was just the next logical step. Which it was. I did some research. In Canada, prenatal paternity testing exists. But it's not cheap and it's not simple. The non-invasive option through a private clinic runs somewhere between $800 and $1,500. And you need a blood draw from both the potential father and the mother. The alternative is to wait until after the birth, which is less expensive and more accurate, but that's also a much longer wait with a lot of uncertainty sitting in the middle of it. I called her. It was the first time I'd dialed her number in 8 months. And it felt strange in a way I hadn't anticipated. I told her I wanted to do a prenatal test. She said yes immediately. No hesitation. We went to a private clinic together 2 weeks later. It was a very strange 2 hours. We sat in the same waiting room and didn't talk much. She asked how I was doing, and I said I was okay. And she nodded and looked at her phone and I looked at mine. The detective my blood fias, friendly and professional, and had no idea she was standing in the middle of the most complicated 2 hours of my recent life. The results came back about 10 days later. I opened the email alone in my apartment. My work friend had offered to be there but I told him no, I needed to do it by myself. I opened the email and I read it twice before I actually understood what I was looking at. The probability of paternity, 99.997%. I sat with that number for a long time. Here's the thing. I had prepared myself for both outcomes. I'd genuinely tried to. I'd told myself that if the number came back high, I would take a breath and figure out what that meant. And I would not make a decision in a single afternoon. I'd told myself that if it came back 0, I would feel relief and also something else I couldn't name. And I would let myself feel both things before I decided what to do. What I hadn't prepared for was how it actually felt to sit in my apartment, reading 99.997%, and realize that a child was going to exist in the world who was half mine. I didn't call her that day. I didn't call anyone. I went for a run along the river, even though it was early December and the path was icy in patches and I just ran until my lungs hurt. And my face was numb. And I had to slow down. Because I literally could not see properly from the cold. Then I went home. And made dinner and went to bed. And stared at the ceiling. Over the next few weeks, she and I talked. Not about getting back together. That was never the conversation. I want to be precise about that, because I know what people assume when they hear a story like this. We were not working things out. We were not exploring reconciliation. We were two people who were going to be connected by something permanent, trying to figure out what shape that connection was going to take. We agreed on a few things. I would be present. I would be involved. I was not going to be a father from a distance. And I was not going to pretend none of this was happening. But I was also not going to rebuild something that she had broken. The relationship was over. It had been over for 8 months. The fact of this pregnancy didn't change what had happened. It just added something new alongside it. She said she understood. I believed her, mostly. We've had moments, since where I've wondered. She hoped this would bring us back. And I've tried to be clear each time that it wouldn't. But in that initial period, she was calm and practical, and honest about what she needed from me, and I found that I could work with that even when I was still angry. Then I had to figure out what to do about my family. I won't say I wanted to call them. I didn't, exactly. But I also didn't feel like I could navigate what was coming. Co-parenting, a child, the next 20 years of my life, while also maintaining a complete blackout with the people I'd grown up with. That felt like it required more sustained bitterness than I actually had left. I called my mom first. I told her I was going to be a father. I told her who the mother was. I heard her breath catch, and then she started talking, and to her credit, she did not say the wrong thing. She said she was sorry for how she'd handled it when I first told her, and she said she was glad I was calling, and she asked how I was doing before she asked anything about Simone. That mattered to me. It was small, but it mattered. My brother was harder. Not because he said the wrong thing, he actually handled it well. It was harder, because talking to him made me remember all the times he'd had my back before this. And how much it had cost me to close that door. And how much energy it took to open it again even partway. We talked for about an hour. By the end of it I wouldn't say we were back to where we were, but we were somewhere new that was at least honestly mapped. And that was something. I didn't reach back out to him, my former best friend. I want to be clear about that. The family was one decision. He was a different one. He had sent a few messages over the 8 months, and I had read none of them. And I saw no reason to start. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. Some can just stay down. My daughter was born in May. She arrived 3 weeks early, which gave nobody in my life enough time to mentally prepare, including me. I was at the hospital. I was in the room. I held her before she was an hour old. And she fit in the crook of my arm, like she'd been designed to go there. And I stood by the window looking at her face. And I couldn't tell you what I thought, because I wasn't thinking anything. I was just there, completely there, in a way I hadn't been in any room in a long time. I called my mom from the hospital parking lot about 2 hours later. She cried. I didn't, but it was close. The arrangement we have now is not perfect. Nothing about how this started is perfect. My daughter lives primarily with her mother, and I have her every other weekend, and one evening during the week. And we're working with a family lawyer to formalize something more structured. As she gets, there are days when the whole arrangement sits wrong with me. When I drop her off, and drive home in the dark, and the apartment is too quiet and I have to actively remind myself that I made the choices as led here, not all of them, but some of them, and that the quiet is not permanent. But there are also mornings when she's at my place, and she wakes up before me, and I can hear her making small sounds. In the portable crib, in the corner of my room, just talking to herself in whatever language babies use, before they have words. And I lie there and listen, and I feel like a person who is exactly where he is supposed to be. Her name is Avery. My best friend never met her. My family has. My mom came out from Saskatoon for a week in June, and held her granddaughter in my kitchen. And didn't once try to make it about anything other than that moment, which is maybe the most generous thing she's ever done for me. There are people who look at how this ended up, and say it worked out. I don't know if I'd say that. Working out implies a plan, and there was no plan, just a series of moments that I survived one at a time until I was standing somewhere I hadn't expected to stand. I lost my relationship. I lost my best friend. I came close to losing my family. I spent 8 months learning how to take up less space, and then I spent the next months learning how to take up exactly the right amount of space again. What I kept is this. I know who showed up when it mattered. I know who didn't. I know what I'm capable of when everything goes quiet and I have no one to blame but the situation itself. And I know what it feels like to hold something that is yours in a way that nothing else ever quite is. Something that looks up at you with an expression of complete trust that you had absolutely no right to somehow got anyway. That's what I have. It's not the life I planned. It's the life that's here, and it's mine.